I love the start of a new year. Sure, you could be completely cynical and think that it doesn't really mean all that much. The world can't or won't suddenly change because of an arbitrary marking of time. But there's something about a new year to me that genuinely means a refresh, or at least a chance to reset and try something new. Last year, I decided to quit soft drinks and caffeine, something I've always wanted to do just to see if I could do it, and also to experience the health benefits. I found it surprisingly easy after about a week or so, and trust me when I say that, that was not a great week to be me or be around me. This year, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm thinking of speccing more into average white dude and starting a podcast because Lord knows we need more of those right now. But realistically, I think the what I'm trying to aim for is to try to get a new YouTube video every month or so. I think that's probably the better thing to do, if I'm gonna be honest. So right now I'm actually working on a few scripts, but they're kind of a little bit more timely. They talk about things happening in March and February and April, because saying things in order doesn't make any sense, but you get what I mean, because what is time? So before that happens and the industry reawakens from its holiday slumber to surprise and scorn us with its machinations, I thought I'd do something a little bit lighter and talk about some games I've been playing lately, both of which just happen to have sequels releasing this month and might actually be released by the time you're watching this. See, I play a lot of games, but I'm also kind of really bad about finishing them. So one thing I also want to do this year is really try to rectify that. I'm aiming to finish about, say, 21 games, because 21 games in 2021 sounds like a fun and reasonable goal. And to prove that I'm not fudging it, I'm actually filling this all out in a Notion document, so you can follow along at home and maybe see how I'm actually going with this and maybe get my thoughts on them. The link is down here. That's a note to future Jamie to put the link down here. It might be up here, I have no idea. There's just going to be a link there on your screen in the YouTube description. So with all that being said, allow me to be just a tiny bit selfish and talk about some of the stuff I've been playing. Lately, I've been paying for a good RPG just to sink all my time into. So I've been bouncing between a few. I've been dabbling with The Legend of Heroes Trails of Zero because I love that series and I need to see more of it, but I'm kind of not really committing to it at the moment. I obviously got a Mr. setup, so I've been playing a little bit of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, and oh my god, that game is still amazing. Seriously, go play it if you can, it's still the coolest. I've also been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but I really don't want to talk about it because it's kind of really boring. But the one RPG I've been really sinking my time into is Atelier Ryza, Ever Darkest and the Secret Hideouts. So, bit of backstory. Atelier is an RPG series that has a cult audience, but isn't as mainstream as something like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or even Persona. But weirdly enough, it's been around for as long as Persona has. You might also know the series for the fact that it has an annualized release schedule. There's been an Atelier game released every year since 2001, with developer Gus somehow managing to release multiple games in a single year. And not even that big compared to some of the other developers owned by their parent company, Koei Tecmo. Seriously, count the amount of games that Omega Force or Team Ninja work on in any given year. It is ridiculous. This is my first time dabbling with the series, only because of the way they're structured. Atelier is a series known for trilogies or duologies, and Ryza just happens to be the first game in a new trilogy. The second game is out in Japan as you're watching this, and it's set to be released in English by the end of the month. It's also one of the few PS5 games out right now, so if you're looking for a new game to take advantage of your fancy new console, I can preemptively recommend Ryza 2. The core of the Atelier games are the games about alchemy, meaning that most of the game is spent crafting items you need to make progression possible, or to defend yourself in combat. Unlike in every Arthur RPG ever made, you don't buy your equipment, you literally have to go make it. So a lot of the game sees you getting items, throwing them together, going through your existing recipes to unlock better items, etc, etc. It works pretty well, especially in an era where it feels like every game ever has some form of crafting system. The game also has a pretty cool combat system that's unique to Ryza. The core of combat revolves around your party leveling up their attacks and abilities by, well, attacking enemies, but the system really comes together through its order system. During combat, your allies will shout out orders like, do physical damage, or debuff enemies, and if you do that, your allies will do powerful special attacks. To help with this, you're able to attack out of turn, which actually works pretty well. Though where I'm really digging the game right now is, weirdly enough, its story. Ryza's story is surprisingly low stakes for an RPG, spending most of its time focusing on its characters with small vignettes as they live in their tiny island town. While I'm at the point where some stakes have actually been introduced, most of the storytelling has been focused around the town and its characters, and that's kind of interesting. I don't normally play RPGs that focus on these kind of slice of life stories, but if this is a norm for Atelier, hey, I'm kind of actually on board with this. Now, I'm not a fan of the word, but Ryza is comfy to play. There's no stress, no rush to really do anything, enemies aren't all that aggressive on the overworld, And the game has a really generous and amazing fast travel system that more games need to adopt. You can play this game for around, say, 15-30 minutes at a time and still feel like you've accomplished something. In a lot of ways, I wish I was playing this on my console, not my PC, because it kind of feels like a comfy couch and a nice big television would be ideal for this game. Yes, I know I could hook up my PC to my TV, I just don't want to. On top of all this, it really helps your party is immensely likable. Ryza in particular is a surprisingly strong protagonist, breaking off from the TLA standard of overly feminine girly girl to focus on someone who's a bit more headstrong and tomboyish. There's also a couple of other reasons why I think people really like Ryza, but I just can't tell you why at the moment. It's a mystery. If anything, where the game is kind of a letdown is that information isn't always clear. For a game where crafting is such a big deal and the game is more than happy to tell you what you need to make a new item, the game kind of doesn't really tell you where materials can be found, which is information that previous games have explained to the player. Most of my time playing, I've been alt-tabbing to a guide just to find out where I need to go to get a specific material. Even though Gust have been updating the game with bug fixes or features like a photo mode or easier difficulties, they've never quite added in where I can find specific materials. Maybe that's fixed in the sequel? Who knows? Right now, I'm on the homeward stretch of finishing it. In fact, I'm actually literally right at the end of the game as I'm recording this. I was hoping to knock it out before the end of the year, but life and other things got in the way. What's helping is that the game is actually kinda short for an RPG. How long to beat is estimating it around under 30 hours just to complete the story. So if you're like me and you're looking for a reason to get into Atelier, I think Ryza is a really good place to start. Just be warned, it is kind of expensive. Koei Tecmo don't really like sales, and it's also kind of hard to find physically, so if you can find it for a decent price, and if you don't mind a digital game, I'd say pick it up. I think it's really cool. So now that I've talked at length about an anime RPG, let's talk about a bald dude that kills people for reasons. So Hitman 3 is coming out really soon, and I figured, why not get my legs back and give Hitman 2 another go? And then I played a lot of Hitman 2 because, hey, Hitman 2 is actually a pretty rad video game, just like how Hitman 1 was back in 2016, episodic release schedule be damned. Hitman's missions follow 3 simple steps: infiltrating a location, taking out your targets, and then exfiltrating out of there. How you do all 3 of those steps is entirely up to you, as the game gives you numerous ways to attempt all 3 of these steps. The fun is adapting to what the game throws at you as you explore these wonderfully complex levels and worlds. To better sum up this whole idea, there's a quote that I've been thinking about for the longest time when it comes to Hitman.
In Hitman, you are not the one special gear in an intricately designed clockwork world. You're the wrench.
This one quote perfectly encapsulates what it's like to play Hitman as you find ways to break a world that you're not supposed to fit into in order to get your job done. Part of that is due to one of the core rules of Hitman. People don't see faces, they see disguises. So for most people, as long as you look the part, they don't care if you somehow got in there by throwing cans of spaghetti at their heads or shooting them in the head with something. As long as you look the part, you're Gucci. This is also the same world where people disappear forever if you deposit their bodies, unconscious or otherwise, in a closet or a container. The world of assassination is a strange and bizarre one. It also helps that Hitman 2 really ups the ante as far as level design goes. Where Hitman already had a really great sense of scale, Hitman 2 triples that. In one notable example, Agent 47 heads to Mumbai to take down 3 targets, but one of the targets is someone who needs to be identified during the mission, meaning that you'll need to navigate throughout Mumbai picking up on clues as to who this person is. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people in Mumbai and a lot of areas you're not supposed to be in, so it makes for a wonderfully complex and satisfying level to clear. Though my favorite part of Hitman 2 is the whole world of assassination concept, which gives publisher-developer IO Interactive a justification to include all the previous game's levels and integrate them within Hitman 2, even updating them to take advantage of improvements in the way Hitman 2 does its gameplay. So things like bushes to conceal you, or art characters, or working mirrors are now something you'll actually need to consider if you're a veteran replaying levels in Hitman 2. On top of that, you're able to play every level out of sequence, so if you've already played a bunch of the game on other platforms, you can just dive in wherever. While the game does recommend you play each level in order to better understand the game's plot, you can safely ignore it. Look, Hitman's always been a series where its plot really isn't the reason you play this game. The reason Hitman games do a good job of telling a story, but again, it's really nothing to kind of write home about, which is a good thing considering some of the choices IO Interactive have made in the past. What isn't great is the unlock situation. To explain, a large part of both Hitman games is replaying levels, and you'll constantly get unlocks by attaining mastery on each level. These things include things like, say, new items, starting locations, and much more. Hitman 2, while it recognizes the original levels, won't recognize progress. Meaning that if you already played a heap of Hitman, you'll have to play a heap of Hitman 2's versions of those levels to get back to where you were. And that's not getting into the fact that there's offline and online versions of each save, a decision that's making less and less sense as time goes on. Now, if you're playing the game completely fresh, it's really not that big a deal. But if you're like me and have been switching platforms despite progress in multiple versions of the game, especially since Hitman actually does have some weird games of a service layers which should mean progress should carry over, it's a little annoying. Still though, it's actually being rectified with Hitman 3, which is fantastic, but it really would have been amazing here. Still, with all that, Hitman 2 is rad, and you should definitely go give it a shot if you haven't already. And Hitman 1 as well, or just go by Hitman 1, get those levels, then play Hitman 2. It's still a rad game otherwise. So that's just a small taste as to what I've been playing. Trust me when I say when I play a lot more, but I really don't want to bore you with the details. As for 2021, look, I'm not one for making predictions as to what the year will be like, but hopefully not shit like 2020 should be a good and safe one, I think. Look, my one genuine hope is that maybe the game industry will take the wide combination of crunch into actual account and us as critics can stop praising and rewarding games made under such conditions. I know it's not going to happen, but if I'm going to be honest, that'd be really cool to see. Whatever ends up happening, I feel confident in feeling that 2021 will be something of a memorable year. I mean, it can't be worse than 2020, can it? Can it?